We'll take a short break from coronavirus cases around the world and turn to Israel, where the government's watchdog says it would open an investigation into the deaths of 45 people crushed in a stampede at a Jewish religious festival last week. State Comptroller Matyahu Engelman says his office, which audits the government, would look into the circumstances surrounding the event at Mount Meron in the Galilee region. Yesterday, the country observed a day of mourning for the victims. A video showing the moment dozens of people being crushed in a crowd at the festival has emerged online. Witnesses describe a stampede and a pyramid of bodies, including several children, in a slippery metal-floored passageway at the annual pilgrimage of ultra-Orthodox faithful to the tomb of a second-century Jewish mystic, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, in northern Israel. The VOA's Linda Grandstein is in Jerusalem. She joins us now. Linda, great to see you. And I know many in Israel are still reeling from the shock of what happened last week. But it is a day after the day of mourning, which happened on Sunday. How are people still reacting to the enormity of this disaster?
People are very, very sad still. There's been this feeling of kind of a pall over the whole country. This is Israel's largest peacetime disaster in its history. And also, there were so many young people killed. There were two sets of brothers, the youngest of whom was 9 years old. There were several American citizens killed, a Canadian and somebody from Argentina. There were fathers of 6, 8, 10 children. So there's still a tremendous amount of sadness and anger and frustration. And just, it seems like such an unnecessary loss of life.
And we understand that, half the number of people who died have been buried. What's happening to the remaining bodies which are yet to be buried?
I think by now just about everybody has been buried. According to Jewish law, by the way, you're supposed to do a burial as soon as possible. In fact, there were even some of the funerals were held on Friday, just hours after the disaster. In some cases, they waited until relatives could come in from abroad for the funerals or the bodies could be flown out. But as far as I understand, just about all of the victims have been buried. And it's just very sad, two sets of brothers. And what's kind of sad is that people have been warning about the possibilities of this kind of a disaster for many, many years. The site was just not organized. It wasn't really run properly. And so there's a lot of kind of calls to have the police or have the state in charge of the site instead of various ultra-Orthodox sects. The site, by the way, is the second most visited holy site in Israel after the Western Wall. And every year on this holiday called Lag BaOmer, there are warnings that this kind of thing could happen. So, it really wasn't a surprise because the site is not set up and the overcrowding was just terrible. And apparently you see right now the video, that passageway, it's not clear if it had a permit at all to be built.
And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whom we see there over the weekend, promised to probe into the disaster which happened amidst a pandemic and amidst his own political crisis. How is this then reflecting on his leadership of the country?
Well, I think it's kind of one more nail in his coffin. I mean, he basically has until tomorrow to put together a government. And if he can't do that, it seems that he can't, then the mandate to put together a government will either pass to the opposition parties, who may also not be able to put together a government, or to the Knesset. I think that he's not necessarily being blamed directly for this. In other words, this site was set up a long time ago, but I think there is this sense that it's just one more thing that perhaps his leadership hasn't handled. It'll be interesting to see what kind of a probe there is. If it's the probe that was just announced by the controller, that one doesn't necessarily have any ability to, punish people or form, conclusions. However, if there's a full state inquiry, which is what a lot of people are calling for, then that could be bad for Netanyahu.
I'm just wondering if there's any parts, at any point that people do feel some responsibility for what has happened. I mean, Israel has successfully carried out its vaccination campaigns. Almost the whole population has been vaccinated. So a lot of people were eager to get out, to get back to life as normal as they saw it. But do they think, that they're somehow responsible for what happened? The fact that there were thousands of people gathered in one place.
In fact, this year there were about 100,000 people at the site, and in past years there have been up to double that. So yes, people were eager to get out. There was some, concern about coronavirus because while you're right that almost everybody has been vaccinated, the vaccination rates in the ultra-Orthodox community are not as high, and children have not been vaccinated. In other words, it's only from age 16. And the thing, it has caused some in the ultra-Orthodox community to say that we need to have more government involvement in this specific festival, including the head of the ultra-Orthodox Shas party, Aryeh Deri, said that they should take it over. Some ultra-Orthodox are blaming the police, saying they should have been more prepared and been able to, stop the stampede from happening. The police are responding that, they did the best they could and it's not their problem. I think there are calls for a state inquiry to really find out what happened. And it's also causing some re-examination of the role of the ultra-Orthodox community in Israel. They're about 12% of the population, but they have a lot of political power because they've been part of the coalition, and they're the ones who have given Netanyahu his majority. And so some people are saying that, this just shows that they shouldn't be allowed to regulate and to do things on their own. So it's also kind of re-examining, and some in the ultra-Orthodox community are saying that as well. But overall, I think there's still a feeling of shock and sadness over this tragedy.
Linda, thanks again for speaking with us, even through the spirit of mourning for the people of Israel. I do accept our condolences.
Thank you very much.